picture the coal mines of West Virginia in 1920. Miners waking up before dawn, 10 hours a day underground. They come home covered in black and paydays come and they get scrip and not dollars, like little metal tokens printed by the company, good at one place, the company store. Prices are 25% higher than anywhere else. And the company owns his house. They own the kid's school. They own the church. A worker once said the wages he pays out with one hand, he takes back with the other hand. And when workers tried to cash out in real money, brokers would try to buy their scrip for 50 cents on the dollar. Fast forward 1965, Martin Luther King Jr. visited Alabama and met with plantation workers who'd never seen actual U.S. currency their entire lives. Tennessee Ernie Ford put it into a song, I owe my soul to the company store. And so the question, the script system is illegal now. So how is that different than Roblox and Robux for Roblox? How is that different for V-Bucks with Fortnite or Microsoft points or EA coins or any major gaming platform that takes your real money and converts it first into fake currency? Because they take the dollar sign away, people stop spending, and there's an argument that the pain of spending fake money that's been converted from real money goes away. What do you call Klarna's 4 easy payments? Like, these names have changed, but has the mechanism really changed? I mean, what do we actually accept as currency? To raise a kid who doesn't owe their soul to something they don't understand, credit cards on college campuses, all of it fits into this big question, like, whose store is it? And are we giving people all the information they need to make good decisions? I mean, the very definition of manipulation is when one side of an equation has more information than the other side. What are we doing to our children? What are we doing to the next generations? And is this system fair for people who are consuming? Randy, Anthony, what do you think?
This when this topic first came up, it seemed, pretty straightforward and an easy thing to discuss. That, kids are being manipulated, they're being desensitized to money, if you will. And then it really started to hit me that this is a much broader bit of manipulation across, all kinds of age groups, socioeconomic backgrounds, and so forth. So sticking with the kids for a second, by being desensitized at 99 cents at a time, right? Mom, can I buy some tokens? Sure, here's $5 and off they go. And they get a quick rush of excitement because they can play the game. But they really don't know where that money came from and how it was actually earned and what mom or dad had to go through to get. So the kid is desensitized to the origins, the effort that it took to create that $5 or $10, which seems insignificant. But you multiply that times, 30 days, 2 hours a day, and all of a sudden you've got some real money. And there's a lot of stories out there about kids who've run up some big credit card bills on various, Call of Duties and things like that. And that's the real concern for the kids. They, with so much that's going on in terms of stimulation, the need for immediate gratification, the saving for tomorrow is just not something that they're being conditioned for, or preparing for an event, a costly event. They're not going to have the money. I mean, we see that across society now. I don't know what the statistics are. Someone fact checked it, but some huge percentage of people, if their car breaks down and they have $1,000 bill, they can't afford it. They can't reach into their pocket and pay the $1,000. They have to find some other means to get the car back on the road, or to get the lights turned on, or to fix their roof, or whatever the case might be. So what kind of
$1,000 car bill that's not a huge, unfortunately, that's more common than we think.
Sure. And that's, if you're lucky, $1,000 would be a lucky break on it if your car broke down, right? Not to mention the ability to rent a car if it has to stay in the shop for 3 or 4 days, or whatever the case might be. So yeah, things are. We've talked about this in the past. I'm concerned with society's movement to 2 things: 1, instant gratification at all costs, and 2, I got no concern because I'm going to have a government grocery store that's going to give me free groceries, and I'm going to have free bus transportation, and my rent's going to be controlled and medical care is going to be free. And so there's like this, no big deal. Everything's going to be okay. And frankly, I don't think everything's going to be okay.
It's all right, Anthony.
Randy?
You'll just pay more taxes for those people. That's the way that'll work. Just more taxes.
Well, as Margaret Thatcher said, socialism is a great form of government until you run out of other people's money. So,
my take on this is having a kid that I watched play Fortnite, right? You mentioned in your opening, John, and it was a free game, and him and his friends played it all the time, but that company made billions of dollars, and it's buying the tokens, not having any idea where it goes, how it works. And as I look at all of these games that kids are playing, I'll tell you what it really reminds me of is the casino industry. And I don't know if that's intentional that they were modeling the casino industry or if it's just they came to the same conclusions. But if you go into a casino, you don't spend $100 bills, you spend chips. And they are trying to get you to disassociate the money. And it really is a lot of the same playbook. Again, whether intentional or unintentional, I don't have a clue. But, I wrote a book about this because I'm weird and I've spent more time than I could count in economics and going deep into things and thinking about things at second and third and fourth level principles. And my big conclusion is almost nobody understands money. I think it's under 5% of the population, and I'm not sure it's not 1% of the population. And that's intentional. The system is set up in a way that the people at the top have access to a money printer. They get to vote their politicians to buy votes, to pay off their friends or whatever else. And they keep changing. Money was not this complex 200 years ago. For all of history, money was pretty clear, but they have made it so complex. People talk about CPI, but CPI changes like multiple times a year. They change the ruler. Like, you don't know. Unemployment. If we figured unemployment the way we figured it in the 70s, I think it'd be like 15% or something like that. But we've changed the ruler. And how do you possibly, when you have a full-time job, you're raising kids, or you are a kid and you got soccer practice and work and all this different stuff, you can't be reading and learning and what do all these acronyms mean and these big terms. Like Wall Street does it too. They just fill it full of big terms, confusing terms, and financial products. And I kind of think most people don't even have a chance. Like, and you have to really, I go deep, and some of this stuff takes me a long time to understand what they're really saying and what's really happening. So,
real quick, Randy, you're not going to promote your book, but Demystifying Money, there's a picture of it behind you. Check it out. We don't ever talk about that, but it's a complex topic.
Yeah. And the point of my book is to try to simplify it and take it out of these acronyms and complex things and put it in everyday language in a story where people get the message and understand it. But even that, it's a tough topic. I mean, my first version of the book, if I would have put it out, would have been 1,500 pages. I mean, I cut and cut and cut, So I think there's a lot going on there, and it's tough for kids. And I think we're doing them a disservice if we start them in this hole. And money, here's the problem. A lot of our lives are dependent upon money. And I know there's other things that are more important, community and family and health and all these things. But, what schools our kids go to a lot of times is judged by money. What house we live in, what neighborhood, how safe, that neighborhood is. What kind of food do we put in our body? Can we afford quality food, or are we eating crap because that's all we can afford because we are on government assistance or whatever, right? Like it impacts the vacations we take, what restaurants we eat at, what car we drive. I mean, you name it. It really does. People move across the country for a job because it pays more money away from their friends and family, right? And yet most people don't understand it.
Well, and there's a bunch of research. Cambridge, research says the behavioral architecture of financial decisions is largely in place by the age of 7. You have self-control, mental models. By the time formal financial education starts, a lot of the wiring has already been laid down. Now, I think at age 16, it really still matters. For me, I didn't really start learning about money deeply until 19. So I'm convicted that you can change your mental models. You can change the way you see money and use money. But it did take me a significant amount of work over a period of time to get educated about using money as a tool. I had to work hard at it. And so there's a lot of transgenerational beliefs that kind of move from parents to kids all the time. And those those things don't update just because you have more money. I can't remember the percentage, but a large percentage of lottery winners are bankrupt within less than 10 years because the mental model doesn't actually change. And so if you want abundance, there are mental models you want to move away from and move toward, right? And it's not just about schooling, but I think schooling is a part of it, but there's more than that. So talk to me about that.
Well, it's got to, everyone has a hand in this, right? So the parent, the mentors have to have, and I think we talked about this a couple episodes ago, have to have these conversations and actually teach, the methodology of living life with money. There's some percentage of the money that's available to you is for sustenance and needs to be spent today and buy food and housing and so on and so forth, transportation. That on the other extreme, there's money that should just be put away. Randy, you said that there's all these complex terms and so forth, but actually investing is very easy today. If you want to, buy an index fund and have that money sit in a fund for the next, 10 or 15 years and continue to add to it. And then there's the discretionary stuff in the middle, where we make decisions on, delaying gratification or saving for a specific vehicle or a vacation or a toy, whatever the case might be. So that you have to teach that to people. And
What about
I
debt?
don't think any of us.
What about debt, Anthony? Right now, it's so easy. Like, I'll just, I'll pay later. I'll take it today,
Well, yeah,
and I'll just pay for it later.
Absolutely. The pay now, the buy now, pay later crowd. I think that is one of the more evil inventions. To me, it's a
It's not that simple, though. I mean, buying a house was one of the best things in American history. It would be making housing affordable for people to own their own house. I mean, it's a little more nuanced than that, right?
We're talking about the buy now, pay later products that are out there where people are breaking their grocery bills into 4 equal payments. And they're seeing someone mentioned product haul and where people are just buying things because they see someone on TikTok opening 5 or 6 boxes of clothes or perfume or makeup or whatever they're doing. And they're just buying it. Sometimes they return it. And sometimes they don't. And they're paying for it over time. To me, that's predatory lending. It really is. It's preying on someone's emotion and charging them a ton of money to do it. It's just, it's payday loans, the unbanked, the often mentioned in this podcast, Elizabeth Warren has always raised hell about payday loans. And I agree with her 100%. The unbanked have to go cash a check for working on a construction site and they got to pay, I don't even know what the number is, maybe 15% of it it's just, this is the same form of that. I have a real issue with that. And oh, by the way, their delinquencies are rising rapidly. Now, most of them aren't public companies, and so they're not reporting like a Visa, MasterCard, or American Express have to report. But that's, again, all they'll do is raise their interest rate because this is a drug. This is an addiction people have, and it's evil in my view. And but it's not going to stop. It just, my opinion is not going to matter one whit. But I certainly will teach my grandkids about it for sure. And thankfully, my kids have grown up with a sense of responsibility for the most part with their money. So,
I hate these loans that even financing. As a business owner, I always had a problem. Like I never was comfortable offering financing because all these financing companies that would do it, they're like, oh, no interest for 12 months, 24 months, 30. But if you miss something, if you miss a payment or don't pay it off in time, all of a sudden it's 26% interest or 40% interest or some ridiculous, insane thing that people can't afford. And even me who understands this, knows it, and fears it, when we bought this house, I bought 3 different things on that kind. I'd go in, like we went to go buy a new couch, and little did I know when I got a new house, I had to buy a new couch to get rid of the perfectly good old one. But anyway, we were getting ready to pay. I had no intention of even financing it, and there was a sign that said 0% financing for 36 months. I'm like, well, that's too good to pass up. So it just automatically comes out of my account. It'll be paid. I won't get anything. But anyway, there were 3 different things and they had 3 different terms, all 0% financing. Well, even me that understands, on one of them, I screwed up the water system for the house. I thought that the term was longer. It just passed a few months ago, and I got charged with $1,500 worth of interest, like at 26%, even though, like, literally, I went from like $3,500. I'd paid it down to under $2,000 and pretty much went back to $3,500. Right. And my fault. I looked it up. I screwed up. I got the time frame wrong. Didn't mark it in my calendar. I know better, and I still fell for it. And I think most people just aren't as aware.
The guy that wrote a 1,500-page book about money missed it. Like,
yeah,
that's
hard.
Like yeah.
It's
hard.
This is everywhere.
But guys, but there's hope. There's hope, right? Is somewhere. Tell me that if somewhere, if I want to build abundance, like, we're still in the land of opportunity where everyone wants to be in America if they want to. Like, we've talked about this in other podcasts. Like, people come here because they want opportunity. Like, right?
Agreed. So, to be sure that you're protecting yourself so that you can create abundance, you've got to be very, very educated and unemotional about your decisions with money. On the other extreme, we talked about the kids and the, running up bills on Call of Duty and what have you. The other spectrum are small business owners. There are these companies that are predatory on small business owners, where they'll call you up and they'll say, "We give you $100,000 loan." Well, how the hell are you going to give me $100,000? Well, how much did you? How many credit cards? What were your credit card processing bill last month? How many people paid you with a credit card? Well, about 100,000. Okay. Well, we'll lend you $50,000 by tomorrow, 24 hours, and you just pledge, next month's and following month's credit card receipts. The average interest rate on that, and this is going back a few years, was something like 80, with the fees and the interest rate that they charged on those loans, was somewhere between 50 and 80%, if memory serves me right. Now, that, again, it's predatory. Business owners, maybe a guy owns a small furniture store, he's got payroll coming up on Friday, he's going to be a little tight. Okay, I'll take it. And now he's just giving away his store. And now you're in a cycle.
Anthony, can I interrupt here? Because it's building on your idea, but I lived this. During COVID, we were hemorrhaging money, and we didn't know how we were going to make payroll, keep the business afloat. We got the PPP loan, but that was gone in a month. And, we went from debt-free to hemorrhaging money. And we took one of those loans. I took one from American Express. Now, I had a virtually perfect credit rating, and I still was paying something like 20% in with somebody with a lower credit rating wasn't going to have that. And I knew this was a big gamble, right? But we'd put all this time and effort into the business. And be honest, at the time, I was probably more than 50% convinced it was a bad idea, but I also didn't know how to survive, and it helped us survive, and we paid it off. But yeah, we paid that interest. I mean, we did it. I mean, it's desperation. And I think, that was a gamble I didn't want to take. I knew the odds, right? And we rolled the dice and we're able to execute well enough. We came out the other side. But there's a lot of that in today's society. Gambling has never been more popular, at least not in recent history. And it doesn't matter if you're looking at sports betting, if you're looking at the stock market. You were talking about earlier how the stock market's easy, just buy an index fund. Well, we got people listening that don't know what an index fund is, or they don't know the difference between an index and a mutual. And then I own an index fund that's so freaking complex that it is a derivative, and it's paper, and it's like, I bet you I spent 30 hours researching this thing before I bought it. And it's kind of things I don't like, but anyway, it was right for me, at least for this stage of my life. So I don't think it's that easy, but how many people are using leverage? I mean, that guy in Korea, I'm trying to think of the name, but situational awareness is the fund.
Leopold.
He, by the way, final note, he came from FTX. He was an FTX employee. He did this, built it from millions to billions, lost it all because he was leveraged. Like,
So real quick, just
Look,
for the
man.
audience who doesn't understand any of that. So a guy went out, he was with Sam Friedman, whatever
Sam
fund.
Bankman-Fried, Sam Bankman
Ba-
fraud.
Bank, Bankman-Fried. Yeah. So he went out and he spun himself out, then went on to another company where he was accused of some financial misinformation at one of the big tech companies. Then he raised a bunch of money, a $45 billion fund, leveraged it up, meaning taking debt, right? So he took debt from banks. Then those banks, when the stock market went down, called all those loans and he had to sell the entire $45 billion to pay it all back and lost a bunch of money for the investors. $45 billion, which is, for some people, it's real money.
Yeah. Getting there.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, like that's how leverage works. Like that's how loans can get you into trouble where the bank then is a participant in your business. And that's what we're talking about. Let's turn to the abundance side. So if I'm a business owner or a parent, like what do I need to know and teach people about money as a tool so that I can actually make sure that I'm creating abundance with this tool versus just because at the end of the day, money is a part of our life. We have to, we're going to be interacting with it in some way, shape, or form. What are the top one or two things you want to make sure that your, mentees in business, your kids' kids, like what are the things that are most important to grab hold of if you're just starting out today?
Well, you have to develop a respect for it. You have to respect the money and respect the effort that it takes to accumulate it, and having honest conversations about that, and then having life experiences. So, you know, I'm sure all of us have, earned money from our parents for chores around the house, right? You get $2 to cut the lawn. I'm showing my age here, but things like that where you actually experience the effort and have conversations about that. If that person makes $20 an hour, they have to work one full hour to get $20, and the government takes, X percent of that. It costs money to drive from the house to the restaurant to work in the restaurant. Have full conversations, robust conversations about it with your kids, with yourself, and really cherish the effort that it takes to accumulate what you have, however large or small it might be. I think that's the most important thing. And back to the original discussion as we started, there isn't a respect for money when it's translated into Roblox and tokens and things like that. There isn't you're not feeling it. So yeah, I think that's where it starts, is developing a healthy respect.
I think it starts with spending less than you make. Just simply spend less than you make. And there's a lot of people that don't like taking out loans for the future and living on credit cards or whatever is clearly the opposite of that. So if you just do that and save a certain percentage every month and you start young, you almost can't screw up, right? And the traditional thing would be what Anthony says: buy an index fund, buy a simple S&P 500 or whatever, just a straightforward index fund, and forget it. But my real advice is that you need to spend time on this. And I know it's kind of boring to people, but that's why I wrote the book you referenced, John. People spend their whole lives working and doing this and chasing money, but they spend almost no time becoming financially literate. So one, it's educate yourself, but the big thing for me is buy scarce items. For me, that's Bitcoin. It could be gold. It could be real estate. It could be expensive art or luxury watches. Buy scarce assets that the government can't print. And there's something called the Cantillon effect that is affecting everybody's life. It's a lot of the problems we have right now are because of this. And it's that those closest to the money printer get most of the benefit. That's the politicians, that's the big corporations, the lobbyists, that they are able to use this, they spend it, and then it eventually trickles down to workers, and eventually workers get a pay raise. But real simply, when they print more money, it is making everything you own worth less. And even if you don't see the price of the grocery store go up, stocks go up, houses go up, that's in direct proportion to how much money is in supply. So if we go back to COVID, it is the money supply basically then was 15 trillion. I'm rounding off. Now, last month, it was 23 trillion, or in June, it was 23 trillion. They've increased the money supply by over 50% in the last few years. Well, guess what? Bitcoin, there's still 21 million of them, the same number. Gold, it's up, but it might be up, 8%, 10% in that time frame, right? Real estate, I mean, we're building some islands off of, the place in the Middle East, I forget, Panama, et cetera, have some islands are building, but generally real estate is the same. So I think a big thing is you have to, and companies and stock count for that as well. You have to own something that the government can't print out of thin air and you get last. So to me, that's a big one.
So the first thing you said though might be the most important, which is spend less than you earn, like that you bring in. Like that's the first thing. And I think, Dave Ramsey, love him or hate him, I think he's got that cool envelope system where you put cash into envelopes and it's actual cash into an envelope.
I don't know
money.
Tell us more about this. I don't know what that is.
Oh, it's cool. He has this cool concept where like he wants you to pay down debt, and he uses, instead of paying the highest interest loan, I think he's like pay the smallest one first. It's called the snowball effect. And there's lots of debate in financial circles about whether you should pay the highest interest loan off first or pay the smallest one off first. And there's real zealots on both sides. I think he's a smallest loan first guy. But he has this cool thing where you put your cash into envelopes and like, this is how much you're going to spend on rent this month. And here's how much you're going to spend on food this month. And if you want to have Starbucks, like here's your Starbucks envelope. When it's gone, it's gone. And so it really forces you to think through the spending of that cash, which is the opposite of what we talked about at the opening of the show, which was convert cash into this other thing that doesn't feel, as consequential to spend. Right. And so there's cool things you can do to build up those skill systems in your body, like build those muscles for yourself. And I think there's lots of complicated things, but start with the really simple ones. And there's another guy, his name is, what's Dave's name? He has a book called Smart Couples Finish Rich and Smart Women Finish Rich. And I'll look his name up, but he has some similar concepts about how compounding interest and just being really smart and deliberate about what you do have makes sense. But I also recognize that, when there's people that also gain money from the government, it can give a false sense of how much discretionary income I have, and that can lead to bad habits. And so it's tough. Like I met one person who didn't have the same means that I do. And they're like, I spend it when it comes in, because if I don't spend it on something I enjoy, it's definitely going to go to a broken down car or something anyway. And that's going to be a struggle no matter what. So I might as well have something I like as well. That was their mindset. And I have empathy for that.
Yeah, I think it's our responsibility to teach, right? The more we can teach the people around us about the way teaching lessons sometimes can be difficult. I'll give you an example, and this fits very close to home. I know a business owner who had about $500,000. He runs a business, had about $500,000 to $750,000 in his business checking account. And about, I guess, it was February, March, April, somewhere around there, there was a lot of movement in the precious metals market. So he was listening to YouTube guys, and silver's going to go from $70 to $500 because there's not supply, and for a while it jumped from 70 to 120, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, he went and he bought gold and silver, hard assets, to your point. Well, he gets this big job where he has to travel around the country with crews to do some work, construction work, I'll call it. And he needs to buy about $150,000 to $200,000 worth of trucks and equipment and tools. And guess what? The money's not in the bank. So he's got this $800,000 revenue job. He's got to invest $150,000, $200,000 plus another $100,000 or so in labor and travel and so on. So he doesn't have the money. What does he do? He calls me. That's what he does. And so I helped him out. But man, did I give him a talking to. And it was, I managed to keep it under control in quotes, but man, I had a long conversation about that. And oh, by the way, he's going to lose money on those precious assets because he bought at the height of the market. And now they've kind of settled down into a
Yeah,
trading range.
Silver's at $58 as of this recording right now.
Yeah, his average buy was probably in the high 70s. Gold, he was probably at the $4,500 mark, and now it's about $4,000. So he had to kneel down to someone he probably didn't want to kneel down to, and ask for money, and he's going to lose money because he wasn't thinking clearly about the future. He didn't have respect for it. He thought, I'm going to get rich here. Silver's going to go to $500. It's never that easy, but I don't think he'll ever do this again. He's going to liquidate some of those hard assets to refund the business. But tough lesson for a smart guy. Okay, now talking about a guy that graduated college, comes from a good family. There's no excuse for this emotion. Again, get back to that emotion. It's probably the most dangerous thing in the world. We haven't talked about it, but you know that 30% of men, and I think it's 11% of women under 50, have either a online gambling account or a what do they call the Kalshi and prediction market accounts.
Back up. Give me that number again.
Under 50, somewhere between 30 and 35% of males have a gambling account like a DraftKings or a Kalshi account or something like that. Over 50, it's like single digits. Okay? Literally single digits. That scares the daylights out. I mean, that is addiction on your phone. So
yeah, wow.
That's tough to deal with. That's something that has to be dealt with.
Well, so on the flip side of that, David Bach was the name of the author I was trying to think of a minute ago, who has the book Smart Couples Finish Rich and Smart Women Finish Rich. Randy, you had a fact check there too.
Yeah. So Anthony, your number is even higher than you said. Among men ages 18 to 49, it's 52% have an active account. 52%. This is according to ChatGPT.
Now that should scare everybody.
Especially 52% of men 18 to 49. Wow.
I mean,
I didn't even ask it by age. I just asked it in general and came up with that 18 to 49 number. Yeah, that's what I was talking about earlier. It's a gambling culture, but people are doing it in the stock market. The story you told is with gold and silver. At least they're not using leverage, or it doesn't sound like they're using leverage, right? But and he's not necessarily going to lose that. I mean, the price, he only loses it if he sells, right? And this is what I always tell people with Bitcoin. Bitcoin, the price goes up and down, but if you hold it for at least 4 or 5 years, you're going to come out fine, right? And you got to buy stuff for the long term, but this is part of the gambling. People are trying to get in, get a quick profit, get out, buy the flashy new car, and move on instead of,
well, that's,
slow and
that's
steady
the
wins
thing.
the race.
That's it right there. You hit it. Like Dave Ramsey and David Bach and The Wealthy Barber was David Shilton and Randy Lorensen, Demystifying Money. Like it's all the same message, which is, it's if it's sexy, you're probably not going to be rich. Like, I think Thomas Stanley did a 25-year study on The Millionaire Mind, and then he followed up with, or The Millionaire Next Door, and then followed up with The Millionaire Mind, how people generate wealth, and it's slow and steady. And so guys, let's leave people with some hope here. So again, what are the 2 or 3 things you would do? Like, just give me maybe even just one. So Randy, I heard yours a minute ago. You said spend less than you earn. Would you add anything to that?
Buy Bitcoin. But
okay, buy Bitcoin.
If you can't buy Bitcoin, then buy scarce assets. Do not hold your wealth in something somebody else can print out of thin air, i.e. the U.S. government, politicians, lobbyists, big corporations are all trying to get your money. So do not keep your wealth attached to something that they can create willy-nilly. That, by the way, has never ended well in the history of the world. This has been tried for thousands of years, over and over. 0 cases where it worked out well in the end. I don't know that the end's tomorrow, but hold scarce assets. And yes, but you have to start by spending less than you make.
So spend less than you make, get scarce assets that somebody else can't print. Anthony, do you have 1 or 2 you want to add?
So we talk about respect, but I think we have a responsibility to teach this problem is getting worse, not better. I don't want to say it's dire, but I think it is dire. I actually think we're in a position where people are living on the edge. They're not happy with their circumstances. They think they deserve more or they want more, so they're willing to take incredible risks. And
so what do I do, Anthony? I think we got that from the show today. So give me some hope, like one or two things. Randy gave me spend less than you earn. Randy gave me buy scarce assets. What do you do to help teach?
Well, do you have these? That's what I'm talking about. I have a responsibility to teach those around me a better way, a proper way to protect yourself against the things Randy's talking about. So that's what I would say in terms of how I would create abundance. I'd create abundance around in my community, whatever that community is.
And then for me, I would just say I wouldn't take on debt for anything that isn't an appreciating asset, like a house. Like having debt for my house, I think is a great inflation hedge. But debt on my car, I would try to avoid that. So I think there's good debt and bad debt, understanding which is which. And if you're not clear 100% on which is which, don't take the debt. That's where I would go. Well, there it is. I think, like, subscribe, tell your friends about us, have them come talk about this episode. Let's have more conversation. Leave some comments. We'll respond.
Here are tales of abundance. We know that fitness is just as important as money or milestones. It's one of our key 5 F's for lots of us. Taking care of my body while I build my life is one of the more time-consuming and difficult goals to chase. That's why we're partnering with AG1. It's a daily drinkable habit. Less than a minute, that's formulated with 75 plus vitamins and nutrients and designed to support energy, digestion, and immune defense. It even has a few grams of protein that we're all chasing these days. And if you want to try it with our affiliate link, you'll also receive a free AG1 flavor sampler, plus vitamin D3 plus K2 with your welcome kit when you first subscribe, a $72 value. Go to shop.drinkag1.com/tales.
Welcome back. Abundance Briefing. John, our first topic is about the quantum advantage is real, and IBM just proved it. I don't know if I agree with all that, but you have some questions about quantum. And so let's just start with, what are your questions about quantum? And by the way, full disclosure, I am far from an expert here, but I think I have more knowledge than the vast majority of people.
Well, I think I know less than you, but I think the promise of quantum is like this ability to process vast amounts of information in a linear way. And if you can get something like, an LLM or a machine learning algorithm to use quantum computing, I think what happens is you get vastly more throughput, so you can process information a heck of a lot faster. I think you can do it with less energy as well. And I think quantum is going to really be one of the keys to unlocking the value of AI and technology for some of the really big promises around, genetics and healthcare and some of the world's toughest problems. Like, am I thinking about that the right way? Because that's the thesis that I've got today with very little knowledge in the space.
Yeah, I think AI is what we're following, and it's not going on its own path and unlocking intelligence and solving math and diseases and whatever else. The promise of quantum, this is so hard to understand, but is that it can basically see every possible future simultaneously and pick the best one. So when you hear people talk about it, they say, okay, if you need a drug developed and it can take your genome, test every possible combination of drugs to see how it'll respond with your body and what you're trying to do, and instantly give you the best one. And what's best for you might be different than Anthony, which might be different than me, which might be different than every other person. Yeah. And it can do that. Now, they've been talking about quantum for a long time, and they keep acting like it's around the corner. And, Google came out with something recently, and then when you looked into it, it was bullshit. They were projecting, and it was a theory. It wasn't actually a test. Or, I think they did some other one, and they kind of gave it the answers. And there's a lot of fudging. It's really, really early. I mean, I feel like it's like fusion, right? We've been hearing fusion is around the corner for my whole lifetime, and I kind of feel that way about quantum. I hope that they break through. I hope people keep working on it and prove me wrong, because it really does open up a whole new universe. But it's, it's still theoretical at this point. Nobody's anywhere near being able to do it. But if they can figure it out, it will unlock the universe probably faster than AI. if they can actually solve it.
Okay, we'll keep paying attention here. And then I think, at the end of the day, it'll happen or it won't happen, right?
Yeah. And again, there's exciting stuff coming out of some of these labs, but I don't know. I think a lot of it's marketing is my feeling. And they're trying to raise, keep in mind, they're trying to raise money and be able to stay in the game until, they're the ones that crack it. So
yeah,
let's move to the next thing. The headline is Bitcoin overtakes gold as America's preferred hard asset. 49.6 million US holders. As you can imagine, I have some opinions. There are not, let's just call it 50 million. It's, a few people shy of 50 million. There are not 50 million people in America that know they own Bitcoin, at least. Now, what they're counting here, I think, is a lot of now, if you own Tesla stock or you own SpaceX stock or you own an S&P 500 or any of those things, you have Bitcoin exposure. Tesla and SpaceX both have over $1 billion worth of Bitcoin on their balance sheet, right? So technically you have exposure. There's people that have $10 worth of Bitcoin that they got somewhere. I don't consider those Bitcoin holders. And I keep hearing a number separate from this headline that says Bitcoin has 1% adoption worldwide. Well, if there's 8 billion people, right, you're talking, 80 million of them have Bitcoin? No. There's no way it's 1%. It might be 1 basis point, which would be 1/100th of a cent of people that really understand Bitcoin and grok it. I just think I think that's such a small number and it's growing all the time. But this is anybody that's got a pension has exposure. And I think that's what they're counting, right? If you own a pension, you own this S&P 500, you have exposure. But my guess is a vast majority of those people don't even know they have exposure at this point, right? Because most of it hasn't moved. You look at Bitcoin, there's psychos like me. We're not selling, it's not moving, it's not going anywhere.
Well, so just back to the kind of the last topic, with quantum computing, it's, gold took 5,000 years to become a store of value or something like that, give or take, right? And Bitcoin, it's, it's been around less than 20 years, I think, is the number. And so here we go. We're at a point in history where we're going to see a lot.
Well, here's the thing I always think about. At this point in its history, it's growing significantly faster than the internet at the same point in the internet's history. Significantly faster, right? So we are still so early. It's just, it's early. And, there's a long ways to go. All right, John,
I still wish I had bought when you told me to buy at 300. I really wish I had paid attention. 10 Bitcoin at 300 would have been really great.
Well, lots of people do, but I can't, I don't know. I can't roll back time. I wish I could, because I know a lot more too.
Yeah.
So, and I wouldn't have made some of the mistakes I made with other coins and, ICOs and different things. So, all right, John, let's take this next one. And I know this one's kind of near and dear to both you guys' heart, but John, eating less sugar in your first 1,000 days, so roughly your first 3 years of life, adds years to your life in a wartime rationing study. You want to take us through that?
Yeah, I haven't seen these studies specifically. I looked at them this morning. We kind of did the run sheet, but here's what we do know: processed sugar has really acute insulin spikes in your bloodstream, and those aren't good for you for a number of reasons. And we can get into the very nuanced science around it. And I'd probably need to bring Dustin back in to kind of walk through all those details. But the reality is that when you have highly processed sugar, insulin spikes more, larger insulin response in your system, and that does bad things to your body. So it really makes sense to me that when the body is early in development, that if you're sending those massive insulin spikes during early development, they would have an impact on organs and systems of your body that aren't great for longevity. That just makes sense to me. And even if I don't fully understand it, it's pretty easy for me to hit the I believe button based on what I do know about sugar and insulin in the body and how insulin resistance is developed and works. And so looking at this study from kind of post-World War II, sugar rationing in the UK, I may not understand the science, but it's that makes sense to me.
Yeah. Well, tell people what the study came up with. What are the takeaways from that study?
I think that the reality is that sugar rationing reduced mortality in 19% of people, according to Nature Communications, just this year. And the study was 65,000 people in the paper. So you're not talking about like a tiny little cohort. And so pretty convincing science that, processed sugar, not awesome. That's the short version.
This is a bigger story too, in the sense of, what is the definition of sugar? People think of sugar as like this thing that's in a little packet or in a bowl on the table to put in your coffee. But there's sugar in everything. And for since 1964, 67, the government's food pyramid was built on sugar and carbohydrates as the foundation of a good diet. And we've all learned now how awful that really is. So yeah, I think this is a bigger conversation in terms of the impact on, longevity and so forth. I mean, our longevity metric has kind of flattened out. I think it started to flatten out in the late 90s, early 2000s. And maybe, that food pyramid is a significant cause of that.
It went backwards, to be fair, for some parts of society. Yeah. So
yeah.
End of the day, processed food, not as good for you as, whole food. And so, I think there was an argument at one point that people would make that processed food was better than no food. But the reality is, in my world, you want to be moving toward whole food at every moment.
Yeah. Do you guys read the labels? When you go to the grocery store, you go to the store, how often do you flip the label over and read it?
Man, I try to get things that don't have a label, Randy. Like I want the whole food.
I was about to say, I don't think there's anything in my house that I would eat on a regular basis that has a label. Maybe some peanut butter and some protein powders and things like that. But
you should go read the peanut butter, Anthony. I'm not sure you're gonna love it.
Yeah. No, I mean the peanut butter. I buy the all natural peanuts only stuff. But even there, reading the label, you got to read the label and then interpret the label. Olive oil is a good example of that.
Well, I'm talking.
It says. Go ahead.
I was just talking about sugar mostly, right? Because like, I went to the grocery store a couple weeks ago. I ate a fair amount of Greek yogurt, and the brand I normally get wasn't there, so I just grabbed this other organic Greek yogurt. I got home, I was eating it, and I'm like, wow, this tastes too good. Like I kind of was like, how do I look at the label and it's got 20 grams of sugar per serving, right? Just organic Greek yogurt. You would think it would not have all this sugar added, but they decided they had to add 80 grams to a container.
Here's my big surprise where I found sugar. Coconut milk in coffee at Starbucks.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, I went and grabbed the other day, I wanted coffee, and there was a thing of like those cold coffee things. And I grabbed one and I was walking to the register and I looked at the back and it had 45 grams of sugar in it, or maybe it was more than that. I literally turned around and put it back. I was shocked. I'm like, okay, I didn't need a Snickers bar. But anyway, it really is hard to avoid in today's world. So Anthony, let's go to, we've got kind of a big thing here, just friendship in general. So, and the first question that you posed was, are we losing friendships because socialization is too expensive? You want to dig into that a little bit?
Yeah. And this is again, one of a very broad concern in a number of ways. It's extremely expensive for, a large percentage of our population to go out and socialize in a bar or a restaurant and have a meal and maybe a couple of drinks. It's very expensive, and the alternatives are plenty to be alone. So if you combine the fact that I got to spend a lot of money to go socialize, I have to perhaps drive somewhere or get on a train, spend some money on a fare and so forth to get out and hang around with my friends, some of whom may or may not be able to afford it. I may have to carry the tab or so on and so forth. And I have all these other alternatives to stay home, yet be on my phone or my laptop or stream a movie or
play a video game.
Play a video game. I was just with my grandson. He says, "Oh, Dad, go to Netflix. Oh, what do you want to watch? I don't want to watch anything. I can play a game on Netflix, a free game on what are you talking about? Oh yeah, you can do a bowling game. You can do that. So you have all these other options to be alone, and it's creating a mess. I mean, it is absolutely creating a mess in our society where I feel like I feel like I'm on the outside looking in, and I'm watching a video game of people just with their heads down on their phones, just being by themselves, and that just cannot be healthy long term. And we know that having a social community, being among friends, being active, exercising, being outdoors is healthy and leads to a longer and more enjoyable life. And what we're seeing now is with expenses and other alternatives, we're becoming an insular society. And I just don't think I just know it's not healthy. With all the other things we've been talking about today and in past episodes, we are we are in a problematic state, in my 70-year-old opinion. So,
Well, John, you've been talking about this for as long as I've known you, right? That men don't have as many friends. You want to expand on that?
Yeah, I mean, I can't find the stat that someone gave me years ago, but 20 or so years ago, I was told that men had, 10 or 12 friends they could talk to anything about in the 50s. And then in the early 2000s, that number had gone to less than two. And there's lots of kind of science around it, but I can't find those numbers specifically. I've been looking for them. But I think, the Surgeon General has certainly said that loneliness is the number one most important epidemic of our time. That's been Vivek Murthy's statement for probably going on 10 years now. And I think it plays out with the mental health crisis we have. It plays out with what people are experiencing during the pandemic. And the pandemic, I think, exacerbated that problem. And then everything Anthony just said, I think, exacerbates that too. And so how do you teach, for me, my children to go out and have social skills? And then for my wife and I, how do we make sure we're reaching out socially? And then for me personally, how do I make sure I'm continuing to nurture my professional networks? Like those are all things that I spend very deliberate time and energy on. Even the group that the two of you are in that we started, going back 14, 15 years now, same group has been getting together once a month for 15 years. Like those are really important things for our society, my belief system. And I think that the science kind of bears that out. And there's a lot of pressure the other direction, right? And I think spending money is a big one. Like, why do we have to spend money to have relationships? Why not just go take a walk? Why not just have shared experiences together that can be fun? There's so many free activities available, hiking and biking and, but everybody wants to go spend money to do things right now. And I think we do have to be mindful of that. I don't think we have to regulate our way out of it. We just have to work our way through it.
Well, and I think a lot of this is the K-shaped economy, right? That there's, the problem is there are enough people on the top of well, this isn't a problem. This is a great thing that there's enough people on the top of the K, right? We want everybody on the top of the K, and more people there is a good thing. But that pushes up the prices. You look at the NBA finals, not far from us in San Antonio, there were these Knicks fans that were spending $10,000 and $20,000 a game. And think about it. So somebody's a season ticket holder for the Spurs. You have to be fairly well off to begin with. But somebody offers you from New York, some crazy offers you 10 or 20 grand for your seat. You've been waiting. You want to watch this NBA finals game, but you sell it, right? But now take that to the people that can't afford season tickets in the first place. They have no chance to go to that game. Or, concert tickets. It blows my mind what people pay for concert tickets. Like, I don't like music well enough. I just wouldn't do it. But plenty of other people do.
I got to tell you, I'm not even an Alan Jackson fan, and I paid for my daughter and I to go see Alan Jackson's final concert. I'm fairly certain he's going to have another final concert at some point in his career. Just ask Anthony about the Grateful Dead. But we spent a chunk of change on that. I don't like country music. Now, the good news, I came away from that loving Alan Jackson's music. I think he turned me into a fan. I'm embarrassed to say publicly because I generally don't like country and Western music. But man, it was an amazing experience. But how lucky was I to be able to get to do that, to your point, Randy, or most people won't be able.
And I mean, it's a real.
Yeah, you make a good point, John, about you don't have to spend money to have a good time. You can have a good time in a line at the airport, talking to the guy next to you who is impatiently waiting to get through security as well, and just
You can
strike
afford
up
an
a
airline ticket.
conversation. If you can afford an airline ticket, or you're in the grocery store and you can you just have a 30-second conversation with someone can give you a little bit of joy and a little bit of fun, a little bit of interest. You might learn something. There's more to life than taking out your credit card and swiping it to go to a concert or to go to a restaurant. There's a lot of fun to be had all around you all the time. So I just, again, I don't think people think about that often enough. I know I try to take advantage of every moment to have a little bit of levity and a little bit of fun in my life, but not everyone does that.
Well,
I think it also takes, oh, sorry, Randy, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, like, I intentionally put a pergola in my backyard that, and I bought it a little bigger than I thought I needed. And we put, lawn furniture or outdoor furniture in there. And I got my smoker. I got fans up on the ceiling. During football season, I'll probably put a TV up there. But, there are solutions of just hanging out and talking to people. Or, when I was a kid, people spent more time. You'd go to somebody's house and they would play cards. Now it might be more board games, right? Back then they were playing, I don't know, cribbage or pinochle or whatever the hell they were playing mostly.
Which is great. I still play cribbage.
But it's fine. No judgment. It's an old person's game. I didn't know you were that old, but that's it. No, okay. Yeah. Anyway, there are a lot of cheap ways to do it and socialize. Anthony mentioned exercise earlier, right? Going for a walk together, exercising together. But John, you were talking about the loneliness, and you couldn't find the report, but there's a RAND report that reports that 41% of Americans feel lonely at least sometimes, and nearly 3/4 see people they feel close to no more than twice a month, right? And, a great question is, if you have a genuine crisis, how many people can you call? Can you genuinely call? I think for most of us, to your point, that's a lot less than it was 40 years ago or whatever.
That's right.
Right.
That's right. Well, and keep working on it. I mean, there's ways you can work on it, and so get together. But it takes energy, it takes activity, and in a world where you look for your whatever's the open restaurant on your phone right now, it's a little bit more energy to find out what community events are going on, where the free events are, and so there are ways to do it, but it does take energy, no doubt about that.
And our last topic is a pretty quick topic. We talk a lot about power, and I think this is one of the most important races, if not the most in the world, that AI, everything is really based on how much power and, how many electrons you can push around and whatever. But, President Trump has a nuclear reactor pilot program that mandated that at least 3 advanced reactors, new technology, achieve nuclear criticality. I've never heard of that word, but by July 4th of 2026. The good news is they got 4, each built by a different private company, each representing a new reactor design. So I think this is pretty exciting, right? We're moving in that direction and building these smaller, higher tech nuclear reactors. I mean, cleanest energy we're going to find. You guys have an opinion on this one?
So I listened to someone that had a contrarian view about this. Not that this isn't a terrific source of power, but they believe that it's irrelevant because of the advances that are coming with the biggest nuclear reactor we know of, which is the sun. And their belief is we're not going to need these because of the advances in solar power that are coming in the next 5 or 6 years. So whether they're solar arrays in the space or on Earth or whatever, some battery technology that's going to be there to improve our ability to store excess energy when, as we know, there's only certain parts of the day where we max out the capacity of our grid. Most of the day is plenty of capacity. So I don't know. This is a terrific thing, but is it going to be necessary? I'm not exactly sure. So.
Well, I think that we should be playing all these games. This is one of the great things about the free market is we don't have to figure it out, right? That we can have solar panels here. We can have solar panels in space. We can have better battery technology. We can find new sources. We can work on fusion. We can work on nuclear. We can do all of them simultaneously. And that is a much stronger backbone. I mean, if you just want to get down to think about nature, right? We learn a lot by watching nature. Nature doesn't rely on any one thing. And I think that anytime you put all of your power or anything is reliant on one system, this is part of the reason I don't like government. But if it's reliant on any one system and everything else collapses, that doesn't happen in nature, right? There's always checks and balances. So if something happens that all of a sudden solar doesn't work, We have nuclear, we have wind, we have water. I don't
agree.
care. The more, the merrier. And let's see what works. And let's create a resilient system for human flourishing and abundance moving forward. Like I
Yeah,
think
you make a
that's
great point. Let the free market decide, not Anthony. Let the free market decide what the best solution is going to be. I agree with that.
and it's going to be different things for different. One thing it might be nuclear, another thing it might be solar, another thing it might be hydro. Hydro is great, right? We just don't have waterfalls everywhere or running rivers everywhere. But hydro works unbelievably well.
There's a town in Scotland, there's 7,000 people. They get 100% of their energy running a turbine that sits just offshore, and the tide generates the electricity. So the tide goes out, the turbine turns. The tide comes in, the turbine turns. And it's, so that's another technology that may or may not have widespread capability. There's problems with being in salt water and blah, 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 and all that. But yeah, let the free market decide. So I'm with you.
This is human flourishing and abundance. Like if you really want to break it down to first principles, it's energy and moving these neutrons around. And I forget these numbers will be rough, but there was human power. And then when you started burning wood, it was something like twice as effective. And then coal was twice as effective. And then oil was more effective than coal. And nuclear is literally thousands and thousands of times more powerful and efficient. And all of that just allows us, if you think about it in terms of horsepower, right? I mean, horsepower is what the name suggests. How many horses work can this do? Well, if humans had to push a train, or then you have oil, or, if you go from humans to wood, to coal, to oil, to nuclear, it just becomes easier and easier, and you can do more and more things. And a few weeks ago, we talked about using solar power to make clean drinking water, off the grid, et cetera. Well, if you could apply that to nuclear, that's even more powerful. You can make more water, more desalinization, et cetera. So if society wants to win, whether it's here or it's the poorest place on earth, having more energy is really the key to unlocking that abundance in so many ways.
Amen. Great.
Cool. All right, guys.
All right.
Randy, tell them what to
listeners.
do.
Yeah. Thanks for making it this far. Download, subscribe, tell your friends. We've had some really nice growth recently on, in particular, Facebook and Instagram. So whether that's your thing or follow us on Apple, Spotify, just help the show. Tell your friends, etc. We appreciate it. And until next week, go out and spread a little abundance.
Thanks, guys.